Some of the best nourishing and healing herbs are considered to be weeds, and we all know how good weeds grow. Let's dive into 4 super nourishing and healing herbs that should be left to grow on the homestead or even introduced, and how I use them on a regular basis, plus some dandelion honey butter. All of these herbs are considered to be foods. Remember the saying, let thy food be thy medicine. And springtime is when these herbs shine. They're like a spring cleaning for the body. Chickweed Stellaria media is a multi-purpose herb that's on our farm, and we toss it in salads, and it's one of our chickens' favorite treats that they get from the garden. Chickweed is pretty easy to identify. It has hairs running down one side of the stem, and then it changes sides once it hits the leaf node. It'll have little white flowers. There's 5 petals that are deeply cleft, almost looking like there's 10 petals. Once you have chickweed in your garden, more than likely you'll always have chickweed. Each plant can produce thousands of seeds. Chickweed grows best in cool, moist soil. In our Zone 8A, chickweed will grow really well fall, winter, and springtime, multiplying and then dying off during the hot months of summer. But if I let chickweed grow under taller plants like tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, the shade of those plants will protect chickweed and let it continue to grow. Plus, chickweed will act as a natural mulch or a living mulch, keeping that soil cool and moist. The aerial parts on chickweed are what's used, the leaves, the stems, and even the flowers. It contains a wide variety of nutrients like iron, zinc, vitamin A, vitamin D, and potassium. When eating it fresh, you want to pick it when it's young. Flowers are fine, but you don't want any seeds. When it starts to produce seed, it becomes very fibrous and chewy. Chickweed makes excellent poultices and salves, especially for hot, inflamed skin, because it's so cooling and moistening, pretty much like the conditions that it grows in. It also helps move the lymphatic system, helping with edema and swollen glands. If we ever have a dry cough or an irritated throat, I'll make a tea out of the chickweed to soothe and moisten that throat. And dry, irritated eyes, I'll just make a poultice and put that poultice over the eye for about 10 to 20 minutes, and it's totally soothed. Chickweed was traditionally used to purify the blood, drawing poisons out of the body, like things like tetanus and blood poisoning. Poultices were made with chickweed and raw honey. Chickweed should be used fresh. Once it's dry, it doesn't have near the nutritional value or even the health benefits. Chickweed can spread pretty quickly through the garden, but I actually don't mind because this is a food for my chickens. I'll go through and pull up several chunks of it and give it to the chickens on a daily basis. This helps keep it in check. It does the same thing that it does for chickens as it does for us, offering all those good vitamins, minerals, and health benefits. If you're lucky enough to grow chickweed through the summer months and feed it to your chickens, this helps hydrate them because it's so moist and succulent. And this also helps keep their production up. I consider chickweed a food. It's healthy for me and all of our livestock. It's worth having on the farm. Most of the fruits and vegetables that we buy in the grocery store today are missing many nutrients, but nettle can fill in that gap. Stinging nettle, Urtica dioica, is not only great to nourish our bodies, but it also has some wonderful other uses. It's also known as barn nettle because it was commonly found on farms because they're so rich in nitrogen from the manures. The leaves are what we mostly use, but tinctures are often made from the seeds and the roots. Once my nettles are 2 foot tall, then I'll start to harvest the leaves off of them. I'll cut the stems back to about 3 or 4 inches above ground. They regrow, I cut them again, and I can do this about 2 or 3 times during the growing season. This way I have lots of nettle for use during the winter months. I'll make a strong tea of nettle leaves in the springtime to help fight off fatigue. This is one of the best things that I can do to help boost my energy levels, and I'll use it either the fresh leaves or even dried. Nettle is really good for asthma, arthritis, for strengthening hair, bones, and teeth, and it's very good for blood building. I also like to drink nettle tea to maintain my iron levels and help control inflammation. We have friends that take nettle for seasonal allergies, and it gives them quite a bit of relief almost instantly. It's better to be using a freeze-dried stinging nettle rather than the traditionally dried. It just seems to work much better. Stinging nettle definitely has a sting, and it's stronger at certain times of the year than others. And some nettles are just naturally stronger, have more sting than others. So make sure if you plant it into your yard or garden that it's out of the way, that you won't get caught up in it. More than likely, you're going to want to wear gloves when harvesting your stinging nettle. If you're harvesting nettles out in the wild and you get caught up in it and you get that sting, then more than likely there's mullein or even dock growing nearby. You can macerate the leaves of these two plants and rub it on the sting, and it takes it away rather quickly. When stinging nettle is really well macerated, cooked, or even dried, the sting is no longer an issue. Stinging nettle is also great when made into a tea for the garden. It adds all those wonderful minerals and nutrients for the plants. It's used for biodynamic gardening, and I love to add the leaves into my compost tea as well. It's great to add to the compost pile to help activate them. If you want to grow nettle on your homestead and you live in a hot climate, then you'll want to offer it some afternoon shade. It also likes moist soil. It grows best near streams or even ponds. Nettle self-seeds readily, and the rhizomes creep underground, multiplying your nettle plants. You'll know when it's stinging nettle when you brush up against it, but if you don't brush up against it, you can tell because on the stem there's some bristly hairs, and the leaves are oppositely arranged. The tips of the leaves are pointed, and the margins are serrated. Stinging nettle can concentrate heavy metals in inorganic nitrates, so just be aware of where you're harvesting your stinging nettles. All of these herbs are generally safe to use, but you always want to take precautions if you're taking prescription medications, pregnant, nursing, and you want to know the plant families that you're allergic to. It is recommended that you dry or even cook stinging nettle before eating it. However, if it's macerated very well, that takes the sting out of it. And we actually like pesto made with fresh nettles. I feel like it tastes a lot better. Now, I'm not recommending that you do this, but when we do it, we'll substitute half of the basil for half of the nettle leaves. And we'll just do it the same way we do our regular pesto, and it's absolutely delicious. The maceration of the leaves breaks up the spines on those nettles. If it wasn't macerated, then it would cause some real irritation on your throat. Another really good weed or herb to grow on the homestead is plantain, and this particular variety is Plantago major. It has smooth margins and sometimes they're wavy. It'll have anywhere from 5 to 9 veins, and it grows as a rosette close to the ground. If you were to pull the vein out of the leaf, it's like elastic. It has some give to it. I've heard that it's been used as dental floss before, but I've never been able to get that to work. It'll get little greenish white flowers on it with purple stamens. Plantain is a demulcent, making it soothing. It's great when applied directly to skin, and it can be taken internally as well. It's often used for leaky gut and autoimmune diseases when drinking as a tea. We like the young leaves in salads. This size is just a little bit too big. Once they start to get this big, they become pretty tough. So then I'll just juice them. I really feel like plantain is a must-have weed on the homestead. It's excellent for bites, stings, and wounds. It can ward off infections, especially when you combine it with yarrow. Plantain does have antibiotic properties, but they're fairly weak. So when you combine it with that yarrow, then that just adds to that healing ability. And it's soothing because of the plantain. The leaves should be crushed, macerated, or even bruised, just to allow that juice to come out. Then it's applied directly to the skin. You can hold it on there, or you can even wrap it with some gauze or vet wrap. I'll dry several of these leaves through the summer months so that I have plenty of it for winter use. If I'm using it as a poultice and it's in dry form, then I want it to be powdered, and I'll add some water to it to make a paste, and then I'll apply that to the skin. And what would the list be without sunny dandelion? Dandelion Taraxacum officinale. Dandelion is one of the first flowers that bloom in the springtime, offering bees their nectar. Most people don't like dandelion in their lawns, but we actually consider it an important part of our homestead's ecosystem. Dandelion roots are bitter, making them good for the liver function and health. Dandelion is high in vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. Aids in digestion and benefits the kidneys, gallbladder, and boosts the immune system. The entire dandelion plant is edible. The young leaves are best for salads. Once they start to get bigger, they become tough and not so good. Even the flowers are great and beautiful in a salad, and they make a great garnish. Dandelion root can be dried and roasted, and it's a great substitute for coffee while it nourishes your body. The root should only be dug in areas or lawns that haven't had any herbicides or synthetic chemicals used, because that root really absorbs all of those poisons. There's been several studies that show that dandelion can eliminate excess sodium in the body, lowering blood pressure. Dandelion honey butter is a great way to get kids involved in nature and get a taste of the wild. And it's super simple to make. Soften 1 stick of butter and toss in the food processor. Add 2 tablespoons of honey and a cup of dandelion petals with the green parts and stems removed. A pinch of salt and process. Store it in the refrigerator. This is really good spread on some fresh, crusty sourdough bread. These herbs are at their best in the springtime for a good reason. Our bodies need fresh nourishment and a little spring cleaning after winter. You can see how these simple herbs have huge benefits on the homestead for you and your livestock. Make friends with these weeds that God put here for a good reason. And remember, a weed is only a weed if we don't want it.